Alright guys, so lately there's been a lot of confusion with regards to the monster taming genre and where the term creature collector fits in, and a big part of this is because there have been a lot more eyes on the genre lately because of the release of Palworld and its massive success. Now that being said, we have been working to get a Steam tag for the term monster taming, which has been making a lot of progress, but this is not what this video is about. Instead, I want to talk about why most people in the monster taming community don't like creature collector as a substitute for the name of the genre, and how creature collector does actually fit in, because I'm not calling for an end of the term, but instead, if some people who are new to the genre and are going to use the term, I'd rather them use it correctly and figure out a way that we can get people on board with the nuance between the two. Anyways, the monster taming genre as we know it is roughly split up into three major categories, which we've explored on the channel numerous times. Every monster taming game will generally have two of these, but some games can exist by only focusing on one. You have monster battling, which is pretty self-explanatory. A game like Pokemon Stadium would sort of fit into this category by itself. But more so, you'll have games that feature battling and some other aspect to it. You have monster raising, which typically revolves around taking care of and building up your monsters. Titles like Monster Rancher or Digimon World Next Order fit into this, and these cross over into monster battling, so you have raising and battling elements in those games. But you could also have a game that's pure monster raising, sort of like Tamagotchi. And then you have what a lot of us call monster collection or creature collection, which a lot of people have started using, which involves the collection of monsters. This, of course, will include games like Pokemon and even Palworld, and other monster taming games where you collect a bunch of different creatures. I have no problem with people using this term when it comes to those games, but the reason that I and a lot of others don't like the term creature collector as a replacement for monster tamer or monster taming is because it leaves out a lot of games. Sure, there's always going to be people who have to take everything hyper literally to the point where it's honestly frustrating and you want to start shaking them. Like some people will say Kasepi shouldn't be in the genre because you technically transform into them instead of catching them or, taming them, which is just a ridiculous caveat. But the thing about creature collector is that it's very specific to collecting, and there's a lot of games that don't include collection. It's much easier to have a simple nuance for one or two shape-shifting games when it comes to monster taming, whereas with creature collector as a substitute for monster taming, you completely remove any game that doesn't feature collection. Monster taming, which has taming in it, essentially just means to domesticate, aka utilize these monsters for your own purposes, and requires a lot less exception. That being said, creature collector is essentially a category that exists within monster taming that we've been using as a while. We've just been calling it monster collection, but it doesn't really matter anyway. So like I stated, if you're going to use creature collector to define games like Pokemon, Nexomon, Coromon, etc., that's fine because those games do feature creature collection as one of their main focuses, but they're still monster taming games nonetheless. The other big problem I see with creature collection as its own genre is that in its purest form, creature collection doesn't even fit with a lot of the games that it aims to represent. By definition alone, a pure creature collector would just be a game where you collect creatures, which could include bug catching simulators, fishing simulators, and other games that don't really feel right putting them next to games like Pokemon. These types of games, I guess, would technically be creature collectors, but not really monster taming games, in that you don't actually use them for anything besides collection, whereas most monster taming games have at least two of the three pillars I mentioned earlier. Nexomon, for example, has monster battling and creature collection. Monster Rancher has monster raising and monster battling. And a lot of the newer Pokemon games actually have all three. They have monster raising via whatever iteration of Pokemon Ami they're on by now. They have monster battling, and of course they have creature collecting. I don't think that there's any point in trying to fight against creature collector as a tag though, because it already exists on Steam, and it almost seems like there's like this massive conspiracy to make it so, because Steam auto-corrects monster tamer to creature collector, which is why I've been telling people to use monster taming, which is really weird to me. I don't know why it would auto-correct it. Like, I thought Steam was supposed to go by what people are actually tagging things as, and literally everybody who's been tagging stuff as monster tamer are just getting changed to creature collector. So now we have to get everybody to retag things as monster taming, and it's just annoying. But I don't know what's going on, but I think trying to educate people on the difference between creature collecting and monster taming is much more productive and conducive to the genre growing, rather than squabbling over which one people use. So once again, monster taming incorporates most creature collecting games, like Pokemon per se. It incorporates monster raising games where you take care of monsters, like Tamagotchi, and it encompasses monster battling games where you command monsters in combat, or in very few circumstances, transform into them. Monster taming games don't have to have raising, collecting, and battling, but most times feature at least two. And when it comes to collecting, I don't really see pure creature collecting titles like a fishing sim as fitting into the genre, unless there's some sort of battling or raising involved, which would then make it not really a pure creature collector. Creature collector, on the other hand, when applied to games like Pokemon or Nexomon or Temtem, is a subcategory of monster taming, which focuses on monster taming games that specifically include collecting. I keep getting comments from people saying that we should use some tertiary tag that doesn't have precedent, like monster catching, which has issues because a lot of these games you don't even catch things, or some weird fusion of like monster collecting or creature taming, or just randomly made up tags on the spot. And I think that it's only going to muddy the waters if we make a million terms to define the genre. Again, I think creature collecting is only on the rise because a lot of people who aren't really educated in the monster taming space that have only played games like Pokemon and now Pal World, and that's sort of the Steam tag, so it's just causing people to call it that. This also makes sense for a lot of people because they don't really know a lot of the other monster taming games that exist, because typically speaking, it's the creature collecting ones, quote unquote, that are more popular than the strict raising or strict battling ones. Honestly, if people calling it creature collecting still helps to grow the genre, that's what I care most about at the end of the day. I'm going to keep pushing it as monster taming, but I'm also going to use creature collecting as a way to bring people into the wider genre. I might do a video talking about the best, quote, creature collecting games in my opinion, and only include games that have a creature collecting focus rather than games that I enjoy that don't, and sort of tell people what the difference is in those types of videos, and maybe we can get people on board. That being said, if you're new to the channel or don't really know what's going on or why any of this matters, we have a history of the genre being called the Pokemon clone genre, and many games being left out and ridiculed from the wider gaming community. So it's really important to people who have been playing these games for years, the developers behind them, and myself, that we don't let games be left behind just because Steam decided it likes creature collector more than monster tamer, as whoever decided that on Steam's end clearly doesn't know anything, because half the creature collector games are random hentai games. All that being said, I promise that for now at least, this will be the last sort of long form video we have about this topic, as I'm more interested in getting people to play monster taming games than I am about arguing with people who discovered the genre like 5 minutes ago and are telling us that we're calling it the wrong thing. I'm going to use creature collector to steer people the right way and show them exactly what the monster taming genre is all about. And hey, maybe we can make some videos about the other subgenres as well, like monster raising and monster battling too. All that being said, if you want to join the community, definitely consider subscribing to the channel, because this is the #1 place on the internet to get your daily monster taming fix. And if you want to stay up to date on everything, I got your back. You can also check out my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and channel members, and special thanks to the channel members / patrons, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Candy Morency, Tragsoft, and Nemo. And we'll see you next time. Peace.